a delay, so
Just
we'll
because you
see.
can.
Yeah, I can and I will. So
Do or do not.
there is no try. Do you think we're going to see or hear the child speak in this series?
He did by the ship a little bit in the last episode. He was like saying some stuff.
It was like some baby talk, though.
I hope he's voiced by Dave Chappelle.
Is a baby going to be smoking cigarettes too?
Maybe. I mean, do we even know how old this creature is?
I just hope he hooks up with
50.
Baby Groot.
Hooks up with Baby Groot?
I mean, hangs out, pals around. Jeez.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I understand where you're coming from, because no judgments either way.
It'll be more
around his branch.
It'll be more of a Harley Davidson Marlboro Man than a Thelma and Louise.
Marlboro Man. Now we're back to the smoking thing. But no, we are here for What If He Doesn't Survive Live Sunday night with our weekly recap of The Mandalorian. Tonight we're talking about Chapter 10, The Passenger. Neither one of whom is Jennifer Lawrence or
Chris Pratt?
Chris Pratt. That would have been fun.
Or Jack Nicholson.
Or Jack Nicholson. Was there another Passenger movie? Damn, I'm blanking on it, but there was. That's a terrible joke anyway, because referencing Passengers, as I did on a podcast last week, Passengers. That's what I'm talking about. And I referenced it last week on another podcast, and I got subsequently slapped down by Eric Childress, rightfully so.
Well, you do love that movie.
I do love that movie, unapologetically. That movie is trash, and it also has my heart. But we're not talking about great film. We're talking about wonderful television, if we can even call it that. And I'm here talking about this with David Fowley of Keeping It Real and Mike Crowley of YPA Reviews. By the way, Mike, I love that you put YPA Reviews in your title card. That's
branding, baby.
I know, we got to get on the ball, David. I feel like we're missing out. Or something.
Well, whatever.
Yeah, and also introducing the child. Now, I know the child in the show does not have an actual name yet, and it's certainly not Baby Yoda as far as we know. But David, do you have a name for the child that you have there? Not your child, but the child that you have in front of you.
Little dude.
Little dude, nice. Welcome, little dude. All right, so I want to kind of kick off by honing on you guys' reactions to the episode. As was the case last week, and I have a feeling it's just going to be the case going forward, I'm not an early adopter when it comes to the episodes. It feels like you guys are watching it at 2 a.m. or something, right, when it comes out on Disney Plus, because I wake up in the morning and I see these things in Messenger like, oh, I really liked this episode or whatever. So I take it you were both really on board with this in a way that you weren't on board necessarily with last week's episode, The Marshal.
Well, as far as how early we watch it, I have a day job that can be kind of tedious. And what I love about these episodes dropping on Fridays is it gives you something to look forward to. So I usually watch the episode early and then start my work day. So I'm kind of like, yay.
You're pumped,
right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think as I mentioned in the last, I guess we could call these episodes, right? But what we're watching are chapters. Okay.
Yes. Did I call it an episode?
No. I'm talking about what we're doing right here is an episode, right?
Right.
What we watch is a chapter.
And I think I referred to the Marshal, or the one is the episode. So I got to put some money in the swear jar.
Well, in fairness, on my review site with the written reviews, it says like in the thumbnail chapter 10, but then I'm like season 2, episode 2 in it.
Ooh. Confusing the viewer.
Confusing
I was, and
I'll say it like this: when we last spoke, I did mention that I wasn't necessarily lamenting the lack of little dude, child, Baby Yoda, but I was kind of surprised, taken aback a little bit because of the popularity of the character, that he wasn't featured as much. And so I knew that was going to resolve itself, soon. And here we are. This is very much, child centric. And I think any parent can relate to this episode. Chapter. Oh, there I did it.
Swear jar. I'm going to send you guys
a drink every time I say episode.
Yeah. Is that root beer or Guinness?
Yes.
Nice. Is there a name for a root beer Guinness combo? I wonder.
I don't know.
Well, we should come up with one. Yeah, we'll call it the Mando. But
Yeah.
so Mike, what was your thoughts? Like high level thoughts on Passenger? Oh no!
Whatever, dude.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna sound like everyone else, and yeah, well, Dave already knows what I'm gonna say. It was the most fillery of filler episodically episodes I could imagine. Which, hey, if you want to make it episodic, that's great. That's awesome. I loved the heist episode that they did. I believe it was the 5th episode of the first season. With Bill Burr, how are you? And the thirsty Twi'lek, and then the robot, and that was like kind of like a great sort of semi-alien homage, with like a prison breakout. That was cool. This was like a ship crashes and then our heroes have to get out. It's like I haven't seen that episode before in every other show ever. And then there's a sequence where a bunch of scary spiders, could have been snails, who cares what it was, comes after our hero, and they got to shoot their way out into the ship. It was just like everything in this episode I've seen from like 10 other shows. And what makes Mandalorian so awesome is how different each of their episodes are. And here it didn't feel like it was different from anything else other than the, incredible visual effects and production design. So I was very disappointed with it. And I really hope that they do much better next time. And I hope that, and it's starting to verify that those stories about Pedro Pascal complaining that the series is too episodic is starting to look true because of it.
I can understand that criticism. I really liked this episode. I'm on the border of loving it. I think I might have to watch it again. But
You all are.
Nice.
Now, one you are.
Now here, I'm going to play the fence.
News it is.
I'm going to play the fence sitter on this one and say that I agree I'm with David's enthusiasm, but I do also understand Mike's concerns. And I think as I knock my microphone over, one of the things
I'm a curse.
I get the idea that it's a filler episode. I just don't know if we're going to be able to tell that this is a filler episode until chapter until a few more in, because what this was a completely episodic standalone thing, because the passenger in question is this like iguana frog lady. Yeah, I guess she was kind of hopping, but she had more of a slender kind of a lizard thing going on mixed with a frog.
She's called Frog Lady.
Is she? Okay.
Yeah.
Is she really?
Yeah. Like I watch my TV with subtitles, like period, any TV. So it says Frog Lady, like in parentheses when she talks, and even in IMDb it says Frog Lady.
Man, even the Star Wars creators are just like, whatever.
They weren't that creative with names.
Yeah. Well, maybe, because if you want to tie this into other movies, this was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Could we infer that she was the mother of the Frog brothers from the Lost Boys? Anyway, moving on. It was a reach. I get it.
Was a good try.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You're very generous. But okay, the thing is, the whole premise of the episode is the Mandalorian is getting ready to leave Tatooine after his previous adventure. He runs into Amy Sedaris' character, who I will never remember her name.
Peli Moto.
Hello, Moto. So she gives him this passenger or something. I can't remember what the exact setup was, but he is going to help this lady get to the next system over with her kind of container full of eggs. And the conceit of this is because the eggs will not withstand hyper dry or hyper light speed jumps. He has to take the slow route, which from what it looks like is still pretty damn fast. Sublight. Yes. Very cool. So he's kind of annoyed at that because I guess he travels everywhere by sublight now, and it's like a big deal. But they go about their merry way with the child and the frog lady. They get intercepted by two X-Wings who are agents of the New Republic, it looks like. They try and kind of pull them over cop style. And there's some funny interplay between them. And Mando, it's kind of like like with the Return of the Jedi when they're trying to get onto the Endor moon and faking their credentials. But eventually Mando just says, screw this. And he takes off and he makes a run for it onto this planet where, yes, the ship does crash land onto this like ice surface, but then it falls down into an ice cavern. The ship gets completely messed up. But the whole point of that is, if this were a truly episodic filler episode, I feel like it would have ended with them getting to their destination and him dropping Frog Lady off.
Sure. It's not a one-off.
It's not. And so I'm wondering if, as the show goes on, if Frog Lady becomes more of an integral character. Maybe she gets dropped off and we never see her again after the next episode or even between episodes. But if she becomes an important character, then what we see here may be laying some important groundwork for things that happen later on. It just feels kind of, spider aliens and this kind of chase thing. As with everything that Filoni and Favreau have done in this series so far, they're planting constant Easter eggs, not only in terms of visuals, but I imagine in terms of the story. So this may be a filler, but I'm not quite ready to write it off yet.
I would be quite upset if the next chapter doesn't open up with them, at least the Frog Lady's still there, and him dropping her off to reunite with her husband, who has info on any Mandalorians, because that's the whole purpose of him transporting her, is to get more info about Mandalorians, which only her husband knows about. And so she's trying to, they're the last of their kind. That's we've heard that a lot before in other movies, and that's fine. They are the last of her kind. She's trying to take these eggs to the husband so they could be reunited. I would hope that we would pick that up, because I think one of the things that this chapter, let me take a drink here. This chapter, this chapter started out with, the Mandalorian procuring and still having the Boba Fett armor. But after he gets kind of hijacked by these pirates, I'm not sure I know he carried the armor with him, through the desert on foot after his speeder was destroyed. But after this whole episode ended, I was wondering, well, what became of the Boba Fett armor? Did he still have it? Because his ship's in tattered pieces, and he was able to just like kind of seal off him and the child and the Frog Lady in the cockpit, because the rest of his ship was destroyed by these spiders, pretty much. So where is the armor? Maybe I didn't see the armor, but it's like he needs that, I think.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he needs it. I think he was just trying to reclaim it so that when he runs into the Mandalorian collective or whatever, he can give it back and say, oh, by the way, here's this thing I retrieved. I think it's just kind of like an honor thing. Like, if you can get the dog tags from the fallen soldier on the battlefield, you'd bring them back. Gotcha, I don't think he's going to be penalized for something that he loses that he didn't even know he was going to find in the first place. But to that point, his ship did get wrecked, but it's still intact for the most part. The only part they can live in is the cockpit right now, and there's a giant, I think, hole in the hull that is kind of leaking probably parts through space, but it might still be in there, like in a locker or something, or even maybe stuffed in that cockpit with them. But it does leave open some very interesting possibilities of like how much damage is done to the ship. Like, if he gets to this other place, is he gonna have to spend significant time working on it, or does he get a new ship? Does he get Slave One somehow,
or does he crash land onto another planet that leads to another episode? That
probably,
Look,
I think I don't understand this complaint about episodes. I really don't. I mean, it's a series. You're gonna have episodes. If you want
only 8 episodes long.
If you want a movie, watch an 8-hour movie. This is not episodic. Okay. The whole idea is that this chapter opened up with him still having the Boba Fett armor. We ended the last chapter with him procuring the Boba Fett armor. That means that transfers through to this chapter. And it does end off with them kind of the puttering through space with the Frog Lady and the child and Mandalorian on their way, hopefully, to reunite her with her husband. So how is that episodic?
Well,
okay, so here's the problem. It just felt inconsequential and boring. I didn't care
Wow,
about anything
okay.
that was going on in it.
All right.
Well, I mean,
it only mattered for like the last 5 minutes, and that was it.
I think. Well, first of all, I want to bring up, David. I'm glad that you brought up the attempted robbery in the beginning of the episode, because I watched this last night, a little bit later than you guys had, but I was so caught up in what was happening towards the back half that I completely forgot about the setup of this whole thing. There was a cool attempted robbery. I love that Mando gave up his rocket pack to the last bandit.
That was great.
And then he set a little booby trap with it. It was so funny. It was like a Bugs Bunny cartoon in real life that really worked. But no, this is getting back to something I was inferring earlier, which is to David's point about this being, a long movie. We're not going to know the significance of this episode until later. Right? If you go back and look at The Empire Strikes Back, The Empire Strikes Back as a movie is very quote unquote episodic. It is one long story, but there are separate mini adventures within them that if you were to cut them up into half-hour segments, you'd be like, okay, Luke is training with this little creature on Dagobah and now he's going to quit. Great. Now we're going to Cloud City and Han gets frozen. Great. There's this battle on Hoth. Great. But you stitch all these things together and you understand how all of these things interrelate to each other and building a grander story. And I understand the frustration possibly of having these things being dropped every week. If this was like a Netflix style thing where you could watch all 8 episodes, on Friday night, and then we could talk about the entire series, maybe we wouldn't be having this argument, or maybe we would be talking about other things that happen in the entirety of the series, and we would skip over this because it turns out the Frog Lady wasn't significant. So I can see both points of view here.
Well, here's the thing, and I totally understand. Like, that's cool to have episodic stuff, and I'm cool with episodic episodes. Like last season, the heist episode was episodic, but it was different. This wasn't. It was just shoot your way out of the cave before getting overwhelmed, and I didn't care. But there were stuff in it that I did like. I did like how they kind of world belt. Is belt a word? Well, now it is. With
world belt, yes.
Yeah. With the 2 guys from the New Republic kind of pulling over Mandalorian, and you basically have to, I don't remember the exact galactic lingo for it, but it was basically like you need to have a ship that doesn't have an Imperial code to it or an old code to it. So we know it's like
a beacon,
yeah. So because of the beacon, they, you kind of get the idea, okay, this isn't the perfect, all the, the sun is shining and the roses are blossoming sort of universe after the fall of the Empire. There's sort of an insecurity as to you don't know if someone's an enemy or if they're not. And you can see how that sort of confusion led to the creation of the First Order. And they just do it through this very minimalistic amount of dialogue, much like the original Star Wars. When you see the original Star Wars, you see a little spaceship flying, and then you see the enormous Death Star, and you get all the information within those few seconds. And I'm very impressed how they were able to provide needed information just with that X-Wing scene, and then how it transitions later on in the episode. Now, again, I get, like, if I was to watch, let's say, an episode of, because we were talking about earlier, The Boys, every single episode in that show, you could stream those all straight through, and there's not just like an episode where let's say Huey is running around, having a little fun, whoopsie sort of day. It's everything. Like, if you miss an episode, you won't know what happens in the next one. I get The Mandalorian is not that type of show, but to your point, Ian, it is kind of true that it's like, because of the way they release this, and because there's only like 8 episodes, that I just kind of don't like. I just feel kind of frustrated. Where it's like, wait a minute, I waited an entire week after you showed me. Can I give away the spoiler at this point? But we did last week anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
You just showed me Boba Fett. I was like, oh my god, where are we going to go with this? And then it's like, they're going to run around on a planet.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, I feel
it's both. So I feel both ways. I understand both sides. Yeah.
Well, but this is good because I feel like the idea of the filler episode really came out of traditional television, where you would have 24 episodes during the course of 9 months of a year when the traditional season was on. So filling up 24 episodes with content, you're going to have these kind of filler things where it's like you got the main action, but then, we're just going to have the actors hang out and talk and maybe go on some useful little mission.
And with 24, it's fine. Like if 24, like, come on. Yeah, you can have some totally. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is this might be a filler chapter. However, because Favreau and Filoni have spent a year working on these 8 episodes, I'm wondering if what we're seeing is the first part of something that, and I'm fully willing to be ready for this to turn out to be not integral to the greater story. But I feel like they are so good with the economy of their storytelling that what we're seeing here is important. You might not care about it, and I understand, because when we get to the setup of this ice planet, well, not the setup of it, but the investigation of this cave where the frog lady has gone off and she's in this sort of like a pool, which it looks almost like a
hot spring,
a hot spring.
It's like a jacuzzi,
and she's got her eggs in there because the ship, I think there was already a hole in the ship, so it was getting cold. She had to warm her eggs, and around it are these other little eggs, this was the part where I started to tune out, because they are these cylindrical pods sticking up out of the ground that look almost exactly like the eggs from Alien. Baby Yoda, the child, goes up to one, cracks it open, because he's been eating the frog lady eggs throughout the entire show.
Yeah,
which I just love. He's eating them as snacks, and these are like the survival of the species depends on it. But cracks open the eggs. Not only that, but there's little spider guys inside of them. Like, they look like little mini face huggers.
Surprise.
Right. Yeah, sure. But then they all come out and they don't look like face huggers. They look like the spider things, almost like from The Mist, except they don't have like the skull head on it. They just got these giant sucker snouts. And then there's a big chase. And so I'm like, okay, it reminds me of Alien. It reminds me of The Mist, kind of like what you're saying earlier, Mike. It's starting to remind me of other things, and I was getting a little frustrated. But when they get back to the ship and they are starting to overrun the ship, and now I'm like, okay, really, how is the Mandalorian going to get out of this situation? Because they keep getting pushed back and back and back to the point where not only are they in the cockpit and trying to seal the door, as we've all seen the monsters trying to get through the door and blasting them and shooting with fire, they're getting in through the cracks and getting in behind them and everything. They're getting overrun. It had this really intense, like, climax of Night of the Living Dead feel to me, and I got really claustrophobic. I'm like, okay, this is really effective. I like that the 2 X-Wing pilots showed up, to shoot them off of the ship, and then they just kind of flew away because they're like, hey, you could help me out. And they're like, we're going to help you out by not arresting you. So bye.
These are trying times.
Right.
Yes.
There's all these little character details that, in my opinion, make up for the lack of originality in some cases, forward plot momentum. This could be a hangout episode, but I feel like we're getting a lot of cool info about this universe.
Totally.
That we wouldn't necessarily get in a lesser show.
There's a lot of firsts here. This is a lot of first here. I mean, for all I know, this isn't Hoth, and this is the first time we've been on a planet like this. And it's almost like a combination of Cloud City and Hoth. I mean, you have this beautiful chase with these 2 X-Wings following the Razor Crest through the clouds, and it's kind of like almost like a sunset horizon. I thought it was beautiful, and it's another way. It's another thing that reminded me of, like, wow, this is television. But it just feels like big screen moments here. I mean, then the maneuvers that Razor Crest, maybe that's the personal name.
Razor Krispies.
That's right, Razor Krispies. There's the cereal for Mandalorian, Razor Krispies.
or the toothpaste, Razor Crest.
Oh yeah.
Because we can't see Mandalorian's teeth though. So
is it going to be? Are they going to have something like that Jar Jar Binks lollipop toy where you're licking the tongue, but it'll be the frog lady and her tongue?
I missed that product placement, thankfully.
But the Razor Crest maneuvers in the clouds and how it drops down into this canyon, and we have kind of like a dog fight, canyon chase. It was very cool, and it gave me my wish to have the narrative and the action take place on a different a place than Tatooine, where all there are earth tones, so I appreciated this episode just for that. And this is the first time, as far as I can tell, that we ever encountered this alien species that we'll just call Frog Lady right now. So it was very cool to like, nobody except for the weirdo Pelimoto can understand what she's saying, and for Amy Sedaris to be like, it's like, okay, who came up with that?
This is the first time since she's been on this show that I really appreciate her character. There was something about her that really gelled here. Because when I saw that she came back, I'm like, oh god.
Here we go.
Yeah, but it was really cool. Now, here's the thing. I will agree that that we can count this as filler. And I think it would be awesome if in the next episode they get to their destination, they meet Mr. Frogman, and Mando's like, I heard you can direct me to one of the Mandalorians, one of my kind. And the Frogman says, oh yeah, there's this guy back on Tatooine.
I knew you were gonna say that. He doesn't wear the armor anymore.
He goes by the Marshal. No,
he runs a small town. He'd be like, Dah! That's where he'd take his helmet off and just throw it.
Yeah.
That's
what got Pedro Pascal to want to quit the show.
And you know what? We have to say that this episode was directed by Peyton Reed, and Pelimoto is playing Sabak in Mos Eisley Cantina with a Dr. Mandible, who must have been an extra on the Ant-Man movies. Directed by Peyton Reed.
I thought it was hilarious. Great catch. I didn't pick up on that because it's all Disney. That makes sense.
That was hilarious. It's like, and what I like, I think you're right. I mean, I think this episode really kind of sealed the deal for me with Sedaris's Pelimoto, because I love how nonplussed she is with Mandalorian. She's like, don't cry, you'll rust yourself. It's like, I mean, she's just like, yes, he is a formidable bounty hunter and killer, and he walks into the cantina. I'm sure, I can't imagine how many buckets of sweat he has underneath that armor after walking through the desert with all that stuff. and she's not even like, geez, you want a drink? Or, he's like, oh, I had to kill a crate dragon. She's like, is that all? She's like, well, she's just like totally like, whatever, dude.
When you see her interacting with other characters in that world, like, she fits so much more in there. Because, like, you could see her as someone, who comes from basically, what this country is essentially like the Deep South, right. And you got like sort of like that Western setting with all these, aliens and creatures and most. So she works great with those characters.
Yeah.
It's just when you see her along with Mando, you have this guy who's playing it straight, and then you got, watch it, with her loud voice.
With her little droids and treadmill roasting the crate dragon meat.
Yeah.
I think you really hit on something there, Mike. One thing that I thought of, and I kind of thought about this in the last chapter, but it really hit home this one, how she is just stuck on this planet. Well, not stuck. I mean, she has decided in some capacity to live there. Mm-hmm. But when Mandalorian keeps popping up, he's gone off on all these crazy adventures. She's just like, oh yeah, go to this planet, and go to this planet. So like when he goes off to take Frog Lady, she's probably just thinking, oh, they just went to the next system, and maybe I'll hear from him again. But all of this crazy stuff happened in between while she's just changing her oil and playing cards.
She's probably having a good laugh.
Yeah.
That guy's so gullible. Of course, the chapter definitely reminds you of, Ridley Scott's Alien with these cylindrical, egg cases and everything. It's this chapter is full of eggs. But you know what? I mean, honestly, I was reminded this morning that this kind of episode, hold on, this kind of chapter,
you've gotten through a lot of that, man.
I know this kind of chapter is somebody's first kind of scary encounter, right? What I mean is, I was talking with a 10-year-old fan this morning of Star Wars and Baby Yoda, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, did you watch the new chapter?
You didn't finish it.
And he's like, yeah, but it was too scary. And I'm like, oh, okay, because look, he's 10 years old. I'm sure he hasn't seen Ridley Scott's Alien, or James Cameron's Alien for that matter. But I get it. For us, it's like, oh, we've seen this before. Oh, okay, whatever. But I mean, this could be, unless maybe young viewers who've seen Harry Potter movies or Lord of the Rings movies would probably be able to stomach something like this. But that could be, this could be decidedly freaky for some young viewers, right?
I think so, because as I mentioned, I was getting kind of claustrophobic and worried for the characters when the spiders just kept coming in that last scene. But one of the things I want to talk about is this. At the end of each of the chapters, they have the concept drawings, these wonderful kind of like moving paintings. And the depiction of the spiders was a bit different than what we got in the show, in that they had these like giant red eyes. I feel like if we'd seen more of that, and maybe it was just that they were moving too fast for me to really register it, but it feels like the concept to the finished execution was a bit different. I kind of like the vision of the concept drawing a bit more. They looked a little bit less like something you'd see in Alien and something more alien to the Star Wars universe, if that makes sense.
Well, they showed up in Star Wars Rebels originally,
which I haven't seen.
Yeah. They were an episode of that where they had a bunch of those spiders like come out and everything like that. Well, I can't remember the name of the species. It was in my review, but it starts with a K or something like that.
I think it's Kraken.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Kraken or the Krayt Dragon. I mean, they showed the eyes of the kind of the mama spider once it's on top of the cockpit, and that was freaky enough. I agree. I think it would have been very cool to have it be a little bit more loyal to the concept art. But I mean, honestly, the pacing of the whole getaway, the timing of it all. I mean, you have that one quick shot of the frog lady who was she just got finished. All these little spiders are slowly coming out, and she just got finished putting away all her eggs. And then there's a quick shot of her like using her tongue to grab her clothes. It's like, okay, we're seeing more of the frog and this frog lady. And then as they're running away, she's like, I need to book it. So she uses all fours instead of being, on her two hinds. And I'm like, okay, it's cool. If we're going to have a new alien species in Star Wars called Frog Lady, I mean, she's doing some frog stuff, right? And, it's kind of cool.
Well, she also uses, and this is why I was a little bit confused, because I watched the previously on the Mandalorian recap, and they dug back to earlier in the first season where there was that one
droid.
The droid bounty hunter, whatever it was, that Mando killed in his ship. I'm like, why are they showing that scene again? Because he's got the body, the head, almost as a trophy or just something he didn't bother to throw away in the ship, and she taps into that in order to communicate with the Mandalorian, like the importance of getting these eggs back home. And I thought that was just a neat way to completely use the environment and dig into the history that you're creating. And also that Mandalorian was kind of freaked out to see this thing talking, because he's like, why did you turn that on? As if there's a danger in turning that on, that he could, come back to life as its full sentient self.
Right. And the cool part is he's freaked out because he wakes up from a nap, right? And so all of a sudden there's this robot bounty hunter, Zero, voiced by Richard Ayoade, is all of a sudden talking to him. It's like, what? And then next thing you know, he turns his head a little bit, and the frog lady's like looking at him, and he does the math. And I thought that was what it also does, is it provides viewers with the understanding that this frog lady has the wherewithal to be resourceful and know she's looking around, and she's like, what can I do to communicate with this guy? And I thought it was very poignant I think important for her to communicate what she did, because she basically convinced him, like, aren't you I thought you Mandalorians were, a men or warriors of honor, and you kept your word. You need to see this through. And he's like, look, we're done, and he would love to just be done with it. And who knows? I don't know what he would do just sitting there on this icy rock. But, I thought that was cool for her to be persuasive and kind of, imperative that he complete his, their agreement.
Well, it's also, we've seen this trope too before, the mother, or typically like the mother who's seeking safe passage to a place, maybe she's got a kid or a baby or something, needs, we've seen this in like Children of Men. But in this instance, she's not a passive character, and she's also a character with layers that we are just getting glimpses into. Because I'm thinking, how the hell did she know how to rig up this bounty hunter corpse head to turn into a karaoke machine to communicate? Did she have to go and like change the language settings or something like that? It's like, how smart is she? Is she like a a physicist or an engineer or something like that.
She could be like the lady in the spaceport. She probably knows her because they're probably like engineers together.
She graduated from DeVry.
but that's the thing is like usually when we see these characters they're kind of nondescript, like they are the mother and that's all that they not that that's not important, but that's kind of all that they are meant to get someplace safe so they can raise the kid and be the wife and all this other stuff. But she's like, she might be an ass kicking heroine that we have not yet discovered her full potential. So yeah, like again, even if this does turn out to be a filler episode, there's so much in here that got me thinking throughout it that I'm like, I almost don't mind if we don't find anything out more about Boba Fett or the black lightsaber or any of that stuff. Because I know that we've got 6 more episodes left, and Favreau and Filoni aren't just going to be we'll just save it for season 3. They're working on it. I have faith.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that if you want to call this a filler chapter, that we're, with only 6 chapters left, I have a feeling that this might be the last filler episode before things really start to ramp up, because pretty soon we're going to see, Carano, Weathers, Giancarlo Esposito, we're going to see all them back. And I think that once, hopefully, the next chapter opens up with a drop-off with the, reuniting, the eggs with the parents and then moving on or whatever. And then we get into like really the nitty gritty of what this season is going to provide.
Right. I think it'll be a little mixture of both, because like if you think of last season, I think he had about like the first episode, the third episode, and then the last 2 were like, sort of all the true arcing episodes. Everything else was sort of the, for lack of better terms, filler episodes.
Yeah. Looking at IMDb again, and it's been very deceptive, because last time I looked at IMDb, it told me that this episode would have those characters in here, and it did not. So thanks a lot. Screw you, IMDb. But this one does. I was struck by how they are listing 2 characters who basically played Frog Lady, just as they did with John Leguizamo's character. So we have Misty Rosas playing Frog Lady, yet we have D. Bradley Baker, a veteran, voice actor, playing the Frog Lady. So, I'm wondering if there is some type of like a physicality being recorded for these characters as far as, physical acting. But then we have, it's really going to be very interesting to me to see kind of the behind the scenes of making of these characters. I'm sure it was done somewhat a lot like, Nolte's Ugnaught character from the last season. So that stuff's really, intriguing and curious to me.
One thing they did, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was going to say one thing they did quite well is with last season, they didn't use anything other than a puppet for the child. I think because when they were directing, I think the 3rd episode, I can't remember the young lady who was the director there, but they started to move the puppet away, and Werner Herzog said, "Put it back, you cowards!" And because of that, they kept the puppet here. And here they used a little bit of CGI on Baby Yoda, but it's hard to spot. They do a great job of just using it barely enough and not overdoing it.
And I think it's probably mainly to watch him move,
Yes.
The scuttle about, especially when the spider started coming out, you see them kind of sliding down the snowy slope.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, it feels like when they are using the CGI, they're using it to a purpose to try and make it look like the puppet still.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So I'd like us to touch on the problem of, raising a child that's not your own while you're on the run. I don't know if any one of us can relate to it, but we know, at least a couple of us here know that, raising a child can be precarious and difficult, and children can be difficult. I'm sure Mike can relate to that because he was a difficult child.
Yes, I was. I scared shit against those walls as a kid.
And you slurped eggs all the time when you were, but I think it's funny because it's kind of, Favreau and Reed do a good job at making this kind of comical because, right. And even I would say the music here make it kind of comical because you see, the child look at this this container of eggs that are floating, and there's this aura, this light that makes them kind of like an orangish glow, and they're very alluring. And you see baby Yoda, child, his big black eyes just kind of be transfixed by the alluring eggs. And I think we know right away, even before he starts slurping on them, that he doesn't see them as these, like, that they're so beautiful, I just want to look at them. He knows that this can be a snack, and we get that right away. That's like, oh no, he should not be going by there. And it's funny that we, the viewers, know that before any of the characters really know that. It's like, I don't think Mandalorian is really thinking, oh, this kid's gonna want these eggs. Oh, geez, it's just, oh man, I haven't even thought of that. No, get away from those. No.
Well, it's because the Mandalorian understands the adult perspective of what an egg is.
Sure.
Especially in this context, it's something that has like creatures living inside of it and growing, whereas Yoda sees it as Baby Yoda sees it as something like we'd find in an egg carton. Like, he doesn't know that it's like, oh, we're supposed to be taking these so they can hatch and survive.
Right.
Right now, it's just like a snack with a prize center. There was one bit where I think when he first encounters the glass cage, when he seems to be using the Force to draw the eggs towards him, I'm like, is he going to communicate with them? And maybe that communication is, you're going to taste great. But I love that it is a recurring gag where he just will not stop trying to eat the eggs, even after he seems to understand that every time he does, he gets in trouble or something bad happens. But it also goes to show that he is in tune with the Force. He can move stuff with his mind. He has certain powers, but he's not so in tune with every life force that he understands that there's something growing inside. It's still all just like pure instinct. Like, I see this thing, I recognize that I can put it in my mouth and it's tasty, so I'm just going to do it.
And I'm still wondering how much, we saw a little bit of this in the last season, but I'm still wondering how much the child understands others and the situation he's in. Because when she's they're all in the cockpit, and they're well, not in the cockpit, but they're in the hull, and they're resting, and they realize they're in a predicament in the bottom of this icy cavern. The frog lady does wind up explaining her situation, that these are the last of her kind and she needs to preserve these. And this is after he's slurped a bunch of them, and he's kind of like, the camera's positioned on Baby Yoda going, and he's either saying, I still want to snack them, or wow, I really feel bad about snacking on them. So I'm wondering how much he's registering all this stuff, because it seemed like in the last season he was kind of figuring things out and realizing when he needed to step in or when he needed to like hide or whatever. So, the curiosity of a child is definitely still there, and the cravings, but I think he's learning.
Maybe. I mean, or it could be that these eggs are like, no pun intended, crack. They're just so good that he can't stay away from them.
Right.
I will be very curious to see how many of these eggs are left by the time they get to their destination, because they start out with quite a few of them, but they're getting slim pickings there.
How did the frog lady never notice someone missing?
Well, I was wondering why there wasn't a line in this chapter where she, before she even got on, she's like, look, I can't do hyperspace, and look, there's 18 of these in here. If I lose any of these, it's not cool. Like, put a little bit of math there, and she's like, why are there 11 here? What's going on?
Well, I wondered about whether or not these eggs were somehow also self-replicating, because as the numbers started to dwindle in the tank, and you could clearly see that there weren't as many as when she started, when she goes into that hot spring and they start collecting the eggs to get the hell out of there, it seemed like there were a lot more around her. So I don't know if she was hatching more while she was in there, or if they're somehow like able to like split like cells or something, but I don't even know if we're meant to think about it this deeply, but it's just
maybe
detail I
just
noticed.
Continuity.
It could be. Yeah, the script supervisor went to took an early lunch.
It would be a funny bit though, that at the beginning of the next chapter, there's like only 2 left, and it's like, sorry.
Oh no, my people!
They're like, well, you can't save a species without breaking some eggs. But no, all right. I think we're pretty good, right? Is there anything that we haven't covered in this this recap?
One thing, I don't know if it was discussed in the last season, the state of the universe, right? With the last season, or even in the last chapter, we got that flashback of the second Death Star blowing up. The state of the universe is kind of in question. It's kind of in limbo a bit. There are Imperial-like factions here and there, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time where New Republic is mentioned.
They mentioned it actually just recently in Star Wars. What was it? The new Rogue Squadron game.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm talking about here in Mandalorian.
Oh, no,
I don't know if it was mentioned at the end of last season or whatever, but it is interesting how the New Republic could mean that, the whatever's left of the rebellion is trying to form something. And I like that these X-Wing fighter pilots aren't just shooting before asking questions or whatever. It's just that they're trying to like figure out what's going on. Like I said, they mentioned that these are trying times, and they could have helped Mandalorian with the hull, but or at least Mandalorian thinks they could have helped him. But they opted to just well, we're just going to leave you here. It's interesting, and I hope I'm on the fence with how much more I want to see of this new Republic in Mandalorian. Just as I'm a little apprehensive with how much we're going to see Jedi in this season. I still want it to be very, obviously we know we're going to see Ahsoka, which is played by Rosario Dawson, so that's understandable. But I'm just wondering how much are we? I like to just like have bits slowly revealed to us.
And I think there's breathing room there. I mean, because we've got, I don't remember how old Kylo Ren is supposed to be. Let's say 20 years old or like 25, because this takes place between the fall of the Empire and the rise of the First Order.
Right.
It's 5 years after Empire.
Jedi.
Yeah. 5 years. Okay. Yeah. So we've got say 15 to 20 years between the time we're here in the Force Awakens. So what we're seeing in the Force Awakens, I guess, ostensibly is the New Republic in its kind of prime, because they've got, everything is a bit more polished. It looks more like a modern, I guess, space political apparatus. When we see these X-Wing fighters, they still look like they just got out of the war, like from 5 years ago. They're not in like shiny new ships. It looks like they're still wearing the same outfits. So it is very much the scraps, I think, to your point, David, of the rebellion trying to put something new together. And they've got these like little bands of space cops in different sectors, like trying to do their best. And I would have been curious if they had tried to take Mandalorian in, like where would they be taking him into? I would like to see what that looks like.
I mean, there's only room for how much room do you have in an X-Wing?
Right? Or can they like force him like a guided escort with? I don't know how they get there, but you're saying you don't necessarily know how much you want to see of that. I'm kind of there with you, but it would be interesting to see what that would mean if they took him into custody.
Yeah.
I like that there's all these little puzzle pieces that are going to add up to something bigger. I don't need a complete picture of the Star Wars universe between now and the follow-up films, but I do like this point where we're at, where it's still feels like there's a lot of places to explore, even though we're in between two movie franchises or series.
Yeah, I think between this chapter and the last chapter, I think they're giving us enough to inform us and kind of give us an idea of what's happening, but not to just overwhelm the actual show.
Yeah, it's I would have kind of liked to have seen what happened when they arrested him, though, and just seen the whole facility. Maybe we will see something like that. I mean, the most we saw of the New Republic is when J.J. Abrams sort of metaphorically blew up the politics from the prequels when he blew up Coruscant.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we do have time to see that. I had a thought. I completely lost it. But there's time, and I would be surprised if we didn't see more of what this is. Besides, they haven't gotten to their destination yet, so maybe we'll run into the New Republic. They planted that seed. I know what I was going to say. I think that is the first time. You're right, guys, that I remember hearing the phrase New Republic, and it stuck out to me like, oh, that's where we are, because I've heard of the Old Republic, like Knights of the Old Republic and the Republic, and now it's the new iteration of it. So yeah, I feel like they're setting things up for a bigger story, and I'm all on board with that. But so next week, do we know what next week's chapter is called? Or they kind of reveal that when the episodes drop? They've
been really selective and crafty with the information they give. I mean, I didn't even know Peyton Reed directed this until I watched the episode. Yeah, and so. Kudos to them for withholding all this stuff, but they're for critics or anybody who wants to watch these in advance, it's not happening.
Yeah. Well, we will be back next Sunday to talk about whatever happens. I'm excited to see it. We'll see if this follows that pattern that Mike laid out of like the 1, 3, and then 6 or 7 or 5 and 6.
4 arcing, 4 filler.
Math is fun.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, Mike Crowley of YPA Reviews. We teased this at the beginning, or you did actually. You are writing weekly recaps on YPAReviews.com. So go check those out. Check out David Fowley at Keeping It Real. Like and subscribe to this channel, and join us back next week for What If He Doesn't Survive Live. And thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
See you later.
Bye.